Dot Quantum. I've been alluding to this one for quite some time.
Released throughout 2011 in Japan and licensed by Funimation in 2012, Quantum is a 3-episode OVA series set 2 years after the events of Dot Link, and follows a trio of teenage girls that get caught up in the newest Lost One incident.
And I don't like it, but there are some things to like here.
The first most being, the art style is beautiful and there's actually a sense of narrative pace here that isn't drawn out as badly as previous entries.
And that would be because B-Train, the company responsible for Sign, Luminality, Legend of the Twilight, and Roots, was not hired to make it, and thus the minimalist method of animation and directorial style of Koichi Mashimo was not affecting things, and the animation was thus not coincidentally lazy as a result. While such was mostly worked for Sign and Luminality as they were able to keep a pace, I kind of think Roots was responsible for them not being contracted again.
And for once, we get extensive sites of the real world included as part of the story, with characters that also spend an active amount of time in the world. So, in theory, it allows for more of a cohesive connection as opposed to the small snippets that we have previously had to settle for outside of Liminality or the novels.
And I kind of get the idea that CyberConnected wanted to do something like that for some time, but the necessities of the story setting makes that difficult for the main games, and can end up being superfluous narrative in the anime.
Personally, I feel doing that for Roots is another thing that could have helped that series, if only to obtain a better connection to the people we should care about by contrasting themselves both on and offline after they failed to from the perspective of solely in the game.
It's something I don't think has been appropriately addressed in such a way in a series stylized like .hack has. And yet .hack's the one that ends up doing it in a significant, story-cohesive manner.
But I can say why I don't like the OVA with one simple point.
The protagonist is a fucking idiot. Again. After they just had one with Tokyo and Link. A game that bombed. And their 2 worst entries suffering from that with a significant member of their main cast.
I really hate the idiot hero trope, if you've not caught on. And it has not done this franchise and many others any favors.
I find it far overused, especially when they don't give such character any other significant character traits, and too often it is vastly out of place. And with this story as presented, that's part of the problem here.
Admittedly, Quantum does not go as far as Link or Roots, nor is Sakya as insufferable as Tokyo, Tabby, or Shugo, but it still was a major hit to my reception of this OVA, and one of the key reasons for my dislike of it.
Not helped that the dub has issues.
Well, congrats. What will you do with your newly found celebrity?
Status. Newfound celebrity status. Which isn't even the original line. You know, if you're going to change dialogue so you can match the mouth flapping due to a differing number of syllables present in its originating language, at least try to rephrase it in a competent manner which contains complete sentences. At least they avoided the 4Kids method of dubbing, where they rewrite everything to the point of disregarding what was actually said.
And yes, the translated script leaves much to be desired, and the dubbed voice cast is not good. It's taking quite some time before we get decent performances from those playing the supporting characters, the leads remaining flat throughout.
Yeah, it's bad. But as this was the only Funimation-produced dub of a .hack series, because they're likely to not ever touch Beyond the World, they got some things wrong.
Tonight it is then. We'll meet in Mac Anu at 10.
Mock Anu. It is pronounced Mock Anu. This has been consistent for 3 anime, a movie, and 8 video games, including the Japanese versions. This is literally the first and only time it's botched in such a manner.
This is going to be another 2-video review, simply because there is a lot to cover in this OVA, and a lot of stupid to address. We open with, sadly, our protagonists, spending an evening in the world RX. The twin blade Sakya showing how incompetent she is at the game despite being the longest player of the group.
I dub thee Tabby 2.0!
With her companions and real-life friends deriding her for her continued ineptness. The Black Rose look-alike being Mary Reed, which the doubling refers to as Mary.
Gee, missing the floral symbolism there.
And the ball mug look-alike called Tobias. and despite being a male PC, the player is female.
Honestly, Tobias and Mary are a lot more tolerable than I find Sakia, but Sakia is the fucking lead of the OVA. While I continue to say she's not as bad as Tabby, I think we could still have had a better protagonist.
Give her a break. You know the old saying, even death won't cure a fool.
Yes, but they'd at least go on to annoy someone else.
And while I was initially irritated by them taking on the guises of characters I would really have preferred to see again, along with a lot of other recycled character models throughout the anime that belonged to characters I really would have preferred to see more of,
They're not here, by the way.
I then came to realize this takes place in a game. Even with extremely varied character creation systems, it's inevitably finite, and when the appearance of legendary characters gets around, there are going to be those that ape their style.
Though personally, changing the color scheme would have helped with dissociation, even if Sakia's already taken on a very feminine remake of Kite's appearance. The problem, of course, is, in the past from all three prior anime, there were a hell of a lot of original character designs, meaning the copy-pasting of old models here without even a palette swap, that just seems like they're being lazy.
Anyways, the dungeon the group has found themselves in is the host of the World's One Sin event.
Which looks nothing like either GU's version of it, or how it was described in AI Buster, but both were divergent iterations of the other already. The problem, however, is it looks like a generic dragon!
Yes, seriously, the One Sin is one of the world's uber bosses, and should be showcased accordingly. And say what you will about GU's incarnation of it not looking much like a dragon, it was still a unique design for a monster, along with the beast of the rainbow spectrum it was originally described as. This is something else entirely. And don't even get me started on this being a raid boss requiring an entire guild plus freelancers to even face it, when that's never really been how the world works.
Incidentally, you see the Gothic Lolita Shadow Warlock down there? The one that looks like Aina? Her name is Shamrock, and she's played by Reiko Saeki. If you've forgotten, that's the person behind Pi. Why the fuck are we not following them?
As their team watches the battle, Sakia makes everything worse for everyone, and trips a trap that single-handedly player kills most of Shamrock's alliance. Worse, Shamrock's guild, which is named Yata's Mirror in honor of Takumi Hino.
The dub calls it Yata no Kagami, which, well, yeah, that's the same meaning as that's the Japanese phrase for it, but why was it left unaltered? I may not like it when fansubs change words or phrases that name things, but that's mainly because groups that I see do it often alter series terminology inappropriately, and their translation doesn't capture the truth of the name and the subtext behind why that name was chosen and making such superfluous. That's not a problem here, as Yata's Mirror is an understandable phrase that encapsulates subtext symbolic of Reiko and Takumi's relationship. It's an equivalent translation. And yes, this is the kind of thought I put into judging translation quality.
Anyways, them finding the One Sin was an incidental task. She is actually there to investigate a dangerous system anomaly, and needed the event boss out of the way first. Meaning, Sakia single-handedly is responsible for a chunk of what follows in the story.
I hate media that can wrap up their plots near their beginning with one simple change.
And said anomaly is actually a player, Hermit, whose player character is reminiscent of Mia's.
Except, Mia wasn't exactly a player, so it's baffling why her stylization of a class would be selectable. At least this version actually has beast character classes, so such is less of an outlier.
Anyways, Hermit was also watching the festivities, but lost an item which Sakia ended up picking up, as they all run from the One Sin.
You idiot! I was leading the thing away from you! What are you doing?
Stupid! You're so stupid!
They get out, and it's revealed Tobias got the rare item, while everyone else was distracted. A cape stylized like Bulma's wings, to complete the character ripoff, which I am less appreciative of.
And that is an item that only drops from defeating the monster.
Past that, this switches tones to a normal day for the three girls. Sakia named Asami, Mary named Eri, and Tobias Iori. and they're not any different offline than they are online.
And yes, like I said, this is actually something we should have seen before this, though in brief doses to accent the story.
And it really doesn't here for the most part, being a diversion from the active story concerning the anomaly in the world, though it does serve to show how flippant Asami is about her life, just coasting through and not even really caring, and as a result dragging down Eri and Iori. Eri is a normally responsible person concerned over upcoming tests, and Iori's exposure to Asami gives her an excuse to avoid working at things and shirk her real-life responsibilities, despite her high intelligence, essentially embodying the lazy genius stereotype.
So these three are not positive representations of people playing online games, as has been for the rest of the franchise, bar Link. Those that need the escape or go about their time and such sensibly, and end up coming out better people from the socialization they can't find in real life, or accents that relationship. But these three end up XPs of those that are irresponsible about their playing of such.
But since I started playing the world, my life is about more than just coming here and then going home again. It's like I suddenly realized I can have a whole life outside of school.
And what's keeping her from doing that? Her only friends are sitting right next to her. They could go see a movie, or hell, girls' night in or sleepover. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. Hell, she might have more of one outside of the game.
But no, they are shunning reality for the game realm when they have no reason to. Yeah, it's there for entertainment, but when you ignore responsibilities for nothing but entertainment, you have a problem.
And that's not a hypocritical statement despite all of the time I spent on content for this show. I finally secured regular employment last year, and prioritized my duties there over everything I do to make episodes. It's part of being a mature person, that you need to be able to put such aside and focus on things that are more important. Despite doubling the amount of content I release with my Let's Plays and maintaining my in-depth style of review, which has made me make at least one video that's 30 minutes long a week on average. I need a vacation!
Moreover, I used to be an avid World of Warcraft player, and the only reason I stopped was because I realized it was becoming detrimental to my duties in real life, and have since avoided buying subscriptions to MMOs, as they would be too tempting to just ignore everything else for them, at least unless I was playing it sociably, which I was not.
So yeah, I do see and know where they are coming from on a first-hand basis. It's another reason I don't like this OVA. What I stopped doing to avoid negative consequences, they get to flippantly ignore and keep on doing.
And considering again GU's themes concerning personal responsibility, connections, and growing up, it's again a big faltering step for the franchise.
And this is being completely ignored here, as there is no character arc at all.
And they have a good reason to take time off from the game, as Ioten,
Yes, that Ioten.
has put a bounty on Sakia and her cohorts for screwing them over, but has done it in the name of Yada's mirror, which makes Asami think she screwed up big time. It'd be a good reason to focus on her studies, as Eri is encouraging her to.
But of course, if she did that, then we would not have a plot. Damn it.
Moving on, we're shown Hermit back in the area looking for the item Sakia picked up, using a wood stick to alter the region data, only to segue to Sakuya. Online. Running from bounty hunters.
All because of the stupid bounty.
Gee, maybe you should have stayed offline and studied with your fucking friends.
She runs into Hermit, who recognizes her from the dungeons, and asks if she picked up anything weird. And as Sakia in the game is a kleptomaniac, she does. But she doesn't know it.
You know, the core games in GU allowed you to see another person's inventory when you requested to trade. Well, yeah, every player was technically an NPC, so the normal privacy as such would have been disregarded. It means there's a logical disconnect here about being able to see what she has after he asks, and yet he never does.
They're both captured as part of the bounty, which Samrak has now discovered and is furious over, as this can be seen as player harassment. And considering that would cause a CC Corp crackdown on them, this cannot be tolerated.
Because Reiko is no longer associated with CC Corp in any respect. She's part of an organization that is independently keeping an eye on the world for further cyber incidents caused by CC Corp's negligence.
Meaning, if they find her here, that will lead to enormous trouble for everyone involved. As there is another incident on the horizon her investigations are seeking to thwart. Fortunately, they can shove all of that off on them and onto Iuten, who's just had the pair delivered to him for his retribution.
Do you have any clue how much time I spent preparing for that quest? How much work it took? After all that, did you really think I was gonna let you off with nothing but an apology?
You know, I'm totally siding with the player killer assholes on this one. As, believe it or not, for them, this is a restrained and cordial airing of grievances and requests for recompensation. Or do I need to remind you all of their normal activities?
I love taking out these pathetic noobs. It's really quite fun. Face it, an idiot like you isn't qualified to play this game.
Sakia unintentionally makes a distraction that allows Hermit to hack them out of their restraints, in turn backed up by Mary and Tobias,
who, I don't remember at all how they came to learn of Sakia's predicaments or her location.
And also Shamrock and her team, who they completely ignore. And to think, this is at the point they should have been actually listening to her. Instead, they draw everyone out onto a rather baffling construct and, well...
I think I'm gonna PK you first, Catboy.
And now you've unleashed hell upon the world, Sakia. Great job.
They're all warped to a dead land, where a woman in black begins player killing those present.
Sophia.
It is never elaborated on in any form in this OVA what this entity is, or how Reiko knows of it. You want to know? As I said in Link, CC Corp would eventually develop artificial intelligence drones tasked with debugging the game system and removing system anomalies after they managed to couple together a data drain variant. Sophia is that AI, and it has been corrupted, and is in fact currently involved in causing the current incident. Yeah.
Oh! Now you fucked up! Now you fucked up! Now you fucked up!
This entire area, it's a pariah folder.
Don't look at me, I have no idea what that is, and the OVA does not explain.
Shamrock orders everyone to log out, but Sophia gets to them before they can.
Take that, Barry!
Great, OVA's over, we're done here.
Unfortunately, no. That was only part 1. Part 2 opens with a boy in a hospital logging onto the world, but seeing his parents crying over the news of his fate. But look at the interface gear he has.
This immediately clued me into what was going on here, as it's consistent to the M2Ds and controller for the World R2.
And this is a memory held by Hermit as he wakes up and sifts through the item stores and personal data of all the lost ones, Sophia having passed him by, and in fact, his ally.
I'm going to spoil this simply because, well, it's something that doesn't make sense to me. See, Hermit's dead. And I mean Aina in the GU novel's dead. And he has been since 2015, whereas Quantum occurs in 2022.
This OVA tries to say he's been stuck as an AI wandering the world since then. However, there's a problem with that, and it's mainly tied to the timeline. See, there was no The World active in 2015 with which to upload his consciousness there. That was the year the World R1 was destroyed from a combination of Aura leaving and the Revive Aura plan causing the servers containing the game being set fire to, with 80% of its data being lost, and everything just rolled into R2. R2 in turn didn't come online until months later in December of that year. Most of that year, the entire game server being down, and those specific controller models were not released until 2017. And even past that, in the event this specific incident occurred around R2's release, its servers in turn shut down completely in 2018, and the World RX, the current version at this point in the timeline, didn't come online until 2020, so he couldn't have existed in the world all of that time.
So, for him to be a wandering AI possessing the full memories of a 10-year-old kid that has only known existence in the world for the past 7 years? Yeah, no.
And this isn't even getting into how he got here. Apparently now in the .hack universe, the soul digitization technology that pulls people's consciousness into the world, it's been applied to prisons, who can now upload the consciousness of people to private detention servers, while their bodies are left as empty shells. They then use as computer processing power.
Yeah, they straight up pulled a Matrix. And I'm not talking the theatrical version, I mean the originally intended version the executives had the Wachowskis change, where the Matrix was a necessary part of the machine's activities to use human brains as a part of a massive quantum computer, as our neural physiology is apparently perfect for that kind of processing, and not as batteries. Can you imagine what the film series would have been like had that been in the movies? Would have certainly answered the question of why do they need a Matrix?
Hermit's parents apparently had the money to bribe someone so they could shove their son in one of those, though it is unexplained how he got there from wherever his consciousness was stored. But essentially, that has been what has been going on in the world right now. Every victim of Sopias, Hermit has then hacked to try and find physiological information, in hopes he can find a comparable donor for his real-life condition, which he apparently knows.
We are never told what his illness was, just that it's lethal without a donor to give something up.
And every one of the victims, they have in turn become interfaced with their own quantum computer that a third party has built for their own nefarious purposes.
Which is not something elaborate on at all in this OVA, despite the name of the OVA being a direct reference to it. But you're probably wondering how Hermit could even get the personal information, and how all of these people could be hooked into a quantum computer that uses the brains for data processing when the brains are not actually physically attached to the quantum computer.
And I missed this entirely the first time I watched it, because its explanation is in one specific throwaway line.
That I didn't even realize I missed until I looked the damn OVA up on TV Tropes, as I was under the impression the entire plotline was introduced out of the blue.
See, the explanation is given in the background of the earlier school scene that focuses more on Asami, Eri, and Iori, to the point it's ridiculously easy to miss. At this point in time, people have begun to be implanted with subdermal chips that store personal data, and allow for remote connections to Wi-Fi concerning other activities, and is the new way the current display glasses gain access to the world.
This is the exposition required for the events that follow the narrative to make any sense, and there's barely any attention directed to it. You don't do this!
Granted, it's entirely possible that Hermit's brain was pulled out of cold storage more recently to be inserted into this game so as to play a patsy for the people that are actually building the quantum computer. But if that is so, it's never actually stated or implied to be such.
And, well, the soul digitization tech, that was never something anyone could use on demand, at least before Link and the whole Shixel thing. Even if that's been a recent innovation developed and propagated more wildly in the following years, or even as early as the end of GU, it still was not available in the needed way in 2015 when Toha was supposedly digitized and died.
Not even the digital cell stuff from .hack Cell could be applicable here for explaining that, as even in 2017, that was explained to be in and of itself a new experimental procedure that didn't exist back in 2015.
So, from the greater series perspective, Hermit's presence as a digital entity is a plot hole, and he is the character central to Quantum even having a story.
On top of that, the standardization of Social Security that preceded the rollout of the microchip implants that store them, essentially giving everyone on the planet an entirely new number for such, was also not put through legislation until 2017, as showcased in one of the many news articles that helped build a scope of the universe .Heck is said part of that you see in GU. And by that point, Toha would have been declared legally dead, so would not have received a new one. But his possession of one is another plot point later in the OVA that explains how easily Shamrock discovers who Doha is and why he's performing the actions he is. So he wouldn't even be able to know about this new type of social security in the first place to even access the microchips for these data logs. I've been focusing on this instead of recapping the second OVA episode, pretty much because most of its events, it's reintroducing the series lore and recapping the events of the previous Lost One incidents. Iori is actually motivated to find out what happened to Eri, making quick detective work to discovering Eri's been transferred to one of a number of hospitals CZ Corp holds a significant ownership over.
CZ Corp is a game company. I really do not believe they have the money to throw around to secure private hospitals to hide victims of their negligence.
But they're kept from getting themselves into further trouble by Reiko Saeki contacting them and arranging a meeting in person.
Pleasure to meet you.
Holy crap, Pai's character model isn't as Miss Fanservice as I had previously been led to believe.